Welcome to the first video on professional programming. My name's Andy Wicks, and in this Python video we're going to be looking at some of the fundamentals, some of the things you have to get right from the beginning to be an effective programmer later on. Doesn't matter whether you're intending to be a gifted amateur or a full-time professional. If you get into bad habits at the beginning, those will stick with you. So if you say, oh, I'll do it later, well, if you're going to do it later, you might as well do it now. Professional practice is the quicker way to program. Otherwise, professionals wouldn't do it. Professional practice means doing things in the right way. And if you do things in the right way, you cut down the number of ways in which you can make errors. Cutting down errors is a good way to save time because finding those errors can be a real pain. Let's start at the beginning. It's always a good idea to document your programs. That starts with triple quotes. So as you can see here, I've used triple quotes to explain who the author is, where you can find the code for this video, the date it was written, its version number, and what I'm hoping to cover in the video. You can do exactly the same sort of thing for all your programs. It's a good idea to show people what it is you're trying to do. The objective of a good professional programmer, believe it or not, is to make themselves redundant. Yes, you did hear me correctly. If you're so good at programming that you can be promoted, what you don't want is that the boss says, I'd love to give you a promotion, but unfortunately nobody else can understand your code. So if you make the code as understandable and clear as possible, you're more likely to get promoted. There are two ways to document your program. One is in this triple quote style, and the other is with the hatch sign, where you document individual lines of code. You can do it as I've done it here on its own separate line, or you can put it after the line of code that you're trying to explain. The more comments you put in your code, the easier you're going to find debugging later. It's quite obvious to you what you're doing now because you're in the moment and the logic is clear. But later on, you'll find that you forget in a week or two what it was you were trying to do here. And then your explanations really help. Well, the main problem with programming is the types of errors that you can generate. This video doesn't tackle the errors, that's in the next video, but I am going to explain the terms syntax, semantics, interpreter, and IDE. Syntax is the grammar of the language, how something is put together, and that has to be exactly right. If in English I say the book on the table is, you know that that's not grammatically correct, but you're still going to look for that table with the book on it. That is syntax used with common sense. Unfortunately, computer programs don't use common sense. If you don't get it exactly right, it'll stick its little silicon legs in the air and play dead. So you've got to get the syntax, the grammar, absolutely right. The semantics is the logic of the program, what it is you're trying to do. So for example, in the program below, I'm asking you for your name, and then I'm going to print out your name is with whatever it was you typed in above. Here the logic is clear, but sometimes it's not always quite so straightforward. Let's suppose we're in a class and I say to you, could you stand up, please? You'd think, oh, that's logical, I'll stand up. And if I then said, could you sit down, please? You sit down. Well, there it's all quite clear and logical, isn't it? Well, no. Supposing you were standing up when I said, stand up, please. What would you do? Nothing? Do you try and stand up more? it's not clear. The semantics is wrong. Even worse is if I ask you to sit down, because there's no guarantee that there's a chair behind you. We ought to check to see that that chair is there first. So commands as obvious as stand up and sit down have all sorts of hidden semantics behind them. Your development environment will find syntactic errors. It won't find semantic errors. It can check whether you've got the grammar right. It can't check whether you've got the logic right. That's down to your interpreter. An interpreter is a computer program that is the real language. So the Python interpreter is just a program. And it takes what you've written, takes a line, translates that into machine code, runs the machine code, and then goes back for the next line, translates that into machine code, and so on. It keeps going round until the program ends. A compiler, on the other hand, such as C++, works differently. It takes the whole program, converts that into machine code, and then runs the machine code. And that's quicker, but it's much more difficult to find errors. And an interpreted language is great for shorter, clearer programs, whilst a compiled language is better for things that need speed. As I said above, your IDE, in this case PyCharm, your integrated development environment, will find the syntax errors. It'll find the mistakes that the interpreter needs to know about. What it can't find are the logic errors, and those are the ones that are hard to get.